Hey, welcome everybody to Two Average Jays. We are back. And before we get started, make sure that you like and subscribe. That helps our algorithm and it helps us to get the word out there. We are back. It's our first podcast
Could you
of
tell me about a little bit more
2024.
about that algorithm and how does that work? How exactly does that algorithm work?
I don't know. I just know that if you get likes and subscribes, it helps. Okay. It gets you up there. But before we get started, this is our first podcast of 2024. And this is also our 10th podcast, numero 10. We also
Yes.
teach Spanish on this podcast. Diez is 10.
Roman
So there you
numerals,
go.
10.
Yep. There you go. So we're teaching you Roman. I mean, what more do you need? Leadership, Roman numerals. You got Spanish. What else do you need? There's nothing else you need in life. But we're going to be talking about today. We've had several people reach out and ask about specifically about how to continue your career growth and how to continue your development in a time where it's difficult to do that, right? Maybe you work for an organization that development is not a priority. Maybe it once was, maybe it's not anymore, maybe it never was. And then not to mention, in the society we live in today is much different than it was 10, 15 years ago, right? And how do you navigate through that while also continuing to develop and reinvent yourself throughout that whole process? So, Justin and I are going to be talking about that today in this brief 30-minute episode, and we'll get it kicked off. And Justin, I'll start with asking you a question, just around how different is it this time around for someone to grow and develop in today's culture, society, workforce, where there are a lot of companies focused on the bottom line, and maybe they've shifted their focus away from development, and so the tools and the positions aren't there like they used to be. What do you say to a listener out there that is kind of experiencing that right now and going through those struggles, and what can they do to continue to develop themselves and reinvent themselves?
Yeah. I think that's the right question. And I would start off by saying, first of all, Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to be back.
Happy New Year!
But I would say that first and foremost is that your development is up to you. Like nobody else's job or responsibility. It's no company's job to develop you. You're getting it, then kind of look in the mirror and ask yourself, how could I be better? What are those things that I shy away from, or what are those things that I just really don't feel confident in, and work on getting better because I've gone through ebbs and flows all throughout my career about high intensity development at times where it was a focus and it was talked about and you did it because that's just the cultural norm. And then I've been in different environments where that wasn't the norm and you kind of coast along and then you're like, oh, I haven't paused to focus on myself. And I think probably the number one thing today that, that most people need to stay grounded in is just the information that you're taking in and how that forms your thoughts. Because, when we like the internet really wasn't a thing and you got a news source or you got some sort of information maybe once a week, and so it was easy to say, okay, well that's the truth. But today you're just constantly bombarded with information every corner that you look at, and I think everybody's natural inclination is, let me just go to the headlines and just try to get a little snippet of what's going on as opposed to really learning. And then eventually you kind of start on this path where you start to drift away from where you were and you don't realize it. And so you have to constantly check your own thoughts and beliefs. If you feel strongly about something, look at it from the other perspective. And I think that helps keep you balanced, keeps you in check, and then it helps you make better decisions. So I know I didn't end where you started because you're asking about people that are working in a corporation and if they're not getting development. But like I said, it's 100% up to you to do it. And that's what I see as the biggest challenge today.
Yeah. And as you were talking, and there's something that I kind of wanted to share, and it kind of touches a little bit about and expands a little bit about some of the things that you talked about, because really you talked a lot about that inward reflection, right? That looking inward and not depending on those things around you. And I think there's three important aspects of self development that everyone um, can help utilize as a guiding light for that development. Two of them are inward. Actually, one is really inward. Another one is inward and outward, and the third one is completely outward. The first one is inward and outward, and that's emotional intelligence. And in order to continue in a path of self development, to your point, Justin, it is totally on you. And that inward reflection is about recognizing your circumstances, your surroundings, what place each person plays in that. All those things are really important from an emotional intelligence perspective, and it's a deeper reflection on yourself and what you need to do based on your circumstances, based on the people that have been positioned to help you or to possibly hinder you through that development path that you want to go on. But ultimately, it helps you to react correctly, right? One of the things with emotional intelligence is people that don't have emotional intelligence usually don't go very far in their careers because they make poor decisions by saying something that they regret later, and then usually in a corporation or within a business, they're kind of black labeled as, oh, that person is a little emotional, or they don't respond well to feedback. And when you get those labels put on you, it's very, very difficult to get them off. And emotional intelligence will help you and guide you to make sure that you're positioned in the right place to be successful and to have that continued growth and development that you're wanting. So that's first. The second is completely inward, and it's having a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is about forming a habit of learning who you are. It's a constant reflection on everything you do. Something that in my own life and in my own career and in everything that I do, it's not just about my personal development, but it actually helps me with my personal development. Is that after every conversation I have, before and after, every decision I make, I try to really look inwardly, see how can I react to this, what can I do, uh, and when I did go through a situation and I said some things or did some things, I always self reflect to say, okay, how could I have done that better? What did I do well? Did the person respond in the way that I was looking for them to respond? And so that having a growth mindset, it has a lot to do with forming a habit of continuous learning who you are. And that it's almost like carrying a mirror with you all the time. You're constantly looking at yourself and seeing how you are positioning yourself to the world. Which, by the way, when I think about today's society and how things were different, um, I feel like today's society is much more selfish, right? It's much more. It's all about me. It's all about me. I'm at the center of the world. But the quicker you realize that you're not the center of the story and you're playing a part in the story, the more humble you come back down to earth, and the more self-reflection you have to make sure that you're very aware of everything around you and that you're aware of where you're at in your process. And I say that because I've met a lot of leaders that they get frustrated because they feel that they should be in a position higher than they are, right? They think, oh, I don't understand. It's all politics, or it's all this, it's all that. But a lot of times those leaders are not self-aware, and that's part of that, forming that habit of self-reflection all the time, and listening to feedback, and pursuing feedback to be able to really reflect on yourself and make the changes you need to continue to grow. And then the third and final thing is around strategic thinking, which is a lot of outward, right? It's putting your thoughts into a real plan, right? It starts with the vision statement and trying to determine what it is you want to accomplish, but putting it into action, your strategic thinking aspect, really, putting it on a calendar, putting it on paper, typing it up, whatever it is you need to do. But that strategic thinking, putting it into action, it helps in your career development. It helps put in motion your personal development and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And in a way, it holds you accountable to doing the things that you should be focused on the most from a personal development standpoint, so that you can get to where you want to be and accomplish those things that you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, you went through everything there, but I want to go all the way back to emotional intelligence because, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, kind of one of my guidebooks in life. And I know we all have leadership books that we appreciate, but this was one that helped me be a better person, not just a leader. And that's what they talk about in there. So it's called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he talks
Oh, I
about
thought you were gonna. I thought you were gonna say green eggs and ham.
well, yeah, green eggs and ham. I do not like green eggs and ham. Sam, I am. Different guidebook. That was maybe at two or three, but I found this one a little later in life. And so the first agreement that he talks about is being impeccable with your word, and that's
Mm,
somewhat of that self-talk that you were talking about. And it's healthy to have that inner voice that says, hey, did I do everything I could have there? Could I have done something better? But what it made me realize, he talks about humans as being the only creature on earth that punishes themselves more than once for making a mistake.
mm,
And there's a judge that's in everybody's head and a voice in your head. And when you make a mistake, the judge is telling you, "Hey, you messed up." But the judge also will bring it back up again the next day and the following day if you let it. And so, just being aware, number one, that you have the judge, and then number two, using it in a healthy way to say, "Yep, I made a mistake. I know what I need to do differently, and this is how I can be better." I think just helps form that emotional intelligence because it feels like, and maybe you were implying, is that that inner voice is going away in some people's heads because there's an external voice that's justifying or validating the way that they acted, and it's okay because everybody accepts it. And so if you haven't read that book, I definitely would encourage it, but just be aware that everybody has that voice. Everybody has a judge in their head. And listen, but only listen that one time, and you can make a pivot from there and become better from it. And so
yeah.
I love it because I think that ties directly back to that book. And the second one, and this kind of ties a little bit along with what you were saying too, is not to take anything personally. And it's so easy, especially when times are tough, to take everything personally. And it's hard when maybe you have a conflict with somebody, or somebody says something, that maybe they didn't mean for it to be directed towards you or an attack, but it's so easy to take that personally today. Even as aggressive as somebody walking up to you on the street and just slapping you out of the blue, realize that it's because that person has a whole lot going on in their life, and they worry about themselves a whole lot more than they worry about you. And that's why they act that way. That's why they say those things. And if you're in an environment where you're dealing with the public, you constantly have to remind yourself that is that just because that person yelled at me doesn't really mean it has anything to do with me. They've got other stuff going on as well. And helping that is kind of freeing in your mind to a certain degree because you're not taking on the burden. You're not taking on that emotional poison from that person, and it ultimately helps you be a better person as well.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of a quote that I actually read today. And it says, "Your biggest fan is a stranger, your biggest hater is someone you know." And when I reflected on that, one, it's very dangerous to build your happiness and your definition of success on the reactions of other people. That's one. You can't, if you're trying to pursue a career to make somebody else happy or to make somebody else a fan or to gain raving fans, then you're advancing your career for the wrong reasons, because it won't bring you the satisfaction internally that you ultimately want. Now, with that said, I think it's good to have at least one person in your career, as you're developing, to be that sounding board for you, right? So that when you fall, they're there to pick you up. And when you succeed, they're also there to bring you back down to earth a little bit and keep you focused on what you need to accomplish, and not give yourself too much credit and not take yourself too seriously. So I think those things are important, but ultimately we are in control of who we assign power to, especially when it comes to the people's opinions. And you have to be very careful, as a leader, because listen, not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to be a raving fan of yours, even if you're doing all the right things. Um, they, you know, they want to be, some people want to be where you are, and so they're going to spread that hate. They're going to be your hater, because they desire to be where you are, not because of what you're doing is right or wrong. So you have to be careful not to, and it's easier said than done, right? Because everybody, to a certain extent, is a people pleaser. Um, but you have to recognize that it's in your nature to be a people pleaser. And if you recognize that, then you can act on it and do something about it and keep yourself in check, with it. But it's super dangerous to build your happiness around, how others define, uh, whether you're being successful or not. Like, that's super dangerous. So that's something that just came to mind as you were talking. But another question, Justin, and I think we can circle back around this one is, there's probably several listeners on here who work in an environment today and in a culture where development is not key. Like, it is not a focus. And I know you mentioned, you got to focus on, you can't depend on a company to do that. What other recommendation would you give to someone who maybe grew up within one organization and really hasn't worked anywhere else? What would you say to a person like that, that is, trying to develop themselves through their corporation and through the business that they're in, and how can they better position themselves for the future long term?
Are you asking me to go back and talk to myself 5 years ago? Is that what you're asking me?
Basically.
Wouldn't we all love the ability to do that? Although I don't know, that could be like an existential question. Would you tell yourself to do something different? Because then you're not where you are
And you would learn
today.
for
Yeah,
sure.
it's butterfly effect for sure. So maybe that's where I'd start off is just realize that you're always going to have regret, but you're always going to have hardship, but those things are making you better. But I would say that that's the exact situation that I was in, and going back to reflecting on the time that I had and I worked for the company I did for so long, there's so many things that you're picking up on that you don't really recognize as development for you that you're going to use later. So I'll give you a perfect example. I spent 21 years in the same company. I started out in retail and, ended in retail, but did a little bit with operations and a couple of other things. And throughout that, you kind of learn some soft skills. Like one, obviously interacting and talking to people, but I developed a sales process. Fast forward to today, I'm now my only marketer and I'm out trying to grow my business. And those skills that I learned through that sales process, I apply to my conversations that I have today, whether I'm presenting to a group or I'm out at an appointment with a customer and going through a bid in their house, or I'm talking to somebody about their mortgage. Like it's the same. It's like discovery and learning about them and finding the needs and then ultimately tying it back to a solution. It's all the same. And so those soft skills that you're learning, you're going to be able to apply them later. And then the other thing that you have at your disposal, especially when you work in a big corporation, is you have people all around you. And there's always somebody that's better than you at something. And the key is finding the right person that helps you, in the area that that you want to develop and you want to be better at. So if you don't have what Javier shared, you don't have that inner voice, that inner critic, and have figured out what that is, then you need to find that. That's step one. And then step two is you've got access to resources. And man, I wish that, I leveraged those connections more while I worked at the company I did. Now I tap into those people because I run into things that I wish that I knew more of, or that I need help getting connected with people. And, they're there all around you every single day. So don't take it for granted, especially when you work in a large organization. There's somebody there that can help you 100%. But none of it matters unless you start at step one, which is what you shared, and being able to be a little bit self-critical to the point where you understand what you need to get better at.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about, you know, both of us grew up, through one organization, and that's really one of the things that's very different today as well, right? It's you have to be able to in today's world, work world, with all the layoffs and all the different things happening and things shifting and AI, and you got all this stuff happening in the world. um, the market, the job market is much different, right? And so you have to constantly be reinventing yourself. Every organization has its own language, right? They have their own way of talking about development and processes and things like that. Um, and all those, like Justin said, those skill sets that you learn are definitely translatable, but you need to understand and learn that the language you're learning within the corporation that you're in is not how it is everywhere else. And so the more you can diversify yourself, and this should be part of your development plan, if you're trying to personally develop yourself, you got to find resources and people outside of your org, not just in your org, not just in your direct circle. Even you have to be able to be able to branch out and learn new things and take courses that would help you in other areas of the business. Because then when storms come and you have a layoff, or you have something that happened unexpectedly and you're going to have to make a career shift, you're more well prepared because you've done the work beforehand to make your resume and your knowledge much more much more complete.
Transferable. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes it transferable to other positions and other companies, and that's what will get you there. I can't tell you how many companies out there, they'll tell you, like for example, like SaaS companies, the SaaS companies, software companies, they won't. You may have a ton of leadership experience, but because you don't have any software experience, they won't even give you an interview. And so, if you're interested in that world, you should be probably taking some courses, probably taking some, getting to know some people in that business to diversify yourself to help you from a development standpoint. And so, if all you know is retail, if all you know is, I don't know,
B2B.
wireless or
Yeah.
B2B sales, that is not, you're going to pigeonhole yourself down the road. And so you got to be able to diversify yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you kind of triggered a memory for me as well. Like when you're part of the same company or organization for a long time, you start to develop this image of, well, I only have to navigate inside this world, and because we're such a good company, everybody looks up to us. And then you may not take that time to, when you meet somebody else from another organization, or somebody comes in and they're supporting, you or your team, they don't work within your same organization, you tend to look at them differently and kind of discount to a certain degree on where they're coming from, when in reality they could be the one that unlocks something for you. And I find that today, like all the time, I meet people and I'm like, man, we clicked really well. That's going to work out for me, and I'm going to close that one. And then I walk away from other ones and I said, ah, man, I just, you know what? I didn't give that my all. I didn't feel real good about it. And those are the ones that call. And so you just never know that person you're dealing with, and don't let the ego of the company do the driving for you, to where you miss out on opportunities to meet people.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So I think we're in a good spot to kind of start to wrap this thing up. But before we kind of close it out, we have some predictions to make, right? Some Super Bowl predictions. We got the who the heck's playing? Kansas City, the Kansas City Chiefs. I
Wow.
totally forgot. Yeah, that's how much I care right now, because my Dolphins are completely a
Come
disaster
on,
at the end
Taylor
of the
Swift is
season
playing
every
in
year.
her first Super Bowl. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be really funny to have her out there on the field. That would be hilarious. But yeah, and the San Francisco 49ers. So, in some ways, I wish they could both lose, because I really hate both of them. For
I
one,
did
the
see that. I did
49ers.
see that picture. It had like a map of the US, and it said who everybody's rooting for. And right around like Kansas and Missouri, it said KC. And then just the northern part of California, it said San Francisco. Everywhere else was gray, and it said both lose.
Both lose, yeah. San Francisco for me, when I first started watching football as a kid, my first Super Bowl that I watched was the Dolphins and the 49ers in 1984, and they just completely destroyed us with Joe Montana, and I've never forgiven them ever since, because we have not gone to a Super Bowl since then. And then the Chiefs, I'm just sick of Patrick Mahomes, and I watched that Netflix special, and it just made me even more dislike him even more.
Yeah.
He's
You
just
walk away and
annoying.
you're like, his
His
wife
wife's
is super
annoying.
annoying, and
Yeah,
Kirk Cousins is a great dude. Those are the two
yeah.
things
Be
you
careful
walk
though.
away
She
with.
she might actually be listening to this podcast. Probably not, but
I
anyway.
doubt it. Yeah, she's drinking wine out of a box if she is.
Yeah. So who do you think? Who do you got? Who do you got?
If the 49ers winning the Super Bowl means that I see less Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce on TV, I am all in on the 49ers. I'll be their water boy to help them across, because I just love that. But I doubt that's going to happen regardless of what happens. I was having this conversation with my son's flag football team. They're like, gosh, I wish Lamar could have just beat them, because now we got to watch them again. And I said, you know what? That's what the greats do to you, though. They make you root against them because they're
Yeah.
so good that you're just tired of watching them win. And there was a point where I did that with the Lakers and Kobe. And there was a point where I got to it at the end with the Bulls and said, I really wish somebody new would win. But looking back on it now, it just recognized greatness. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a low scoring game, because I think both defenses are good. But I think KC 21, San Francisco 17. They can't pull it out.
That's funny you said that, because that is spot on. Like I hated Jordan when I was a kid, because he was so dominant. And now, if anybody asked me who the greatest player of all time was, it's Michael Jordan, no question. And I hated Kobe Bryant too, being a Celtics fan. I hated Kobe Bryant. But now I look back and think, man, what a awesome player, and the work ethic he had, and how good he was. And definitely a top 10 of all time player. I don't know where I would position him. That would be another question for another episode. But back to the 49ers and the Chiefs. I do think the Chiefs are going to be too much. What was the score you said?
21-17.
I was going to say 24-17, just because I think there's going to be a couple field goals in there. I just think the Chiefs, they just know how to win. And Mahomes is basically the next Tom Brady. He is Tom Brady in our, that next piece. Passed the baton. Brady passed the baton to Mahomes, unfortunately. But it is what it is. And I think that they just, their offense looked like crap all year, but now it looks like they're gonna, they have all of a sudden found a way to do a lot with no receivers. They probably, hands down, have the worst wide receiver room in the league, and they're still finding a way to score points and to win games. Like, that's pretty impressive. And their defense is legit. Their defense is
good. Well, I think the rest of America agrees with us right now. The line is San Francisco by 2, but 73% of the money is on Kansas City.
Yeah. No,
everybody feels the same way. That line's definitely going to shift.
Yep. I don't think Brock Purdy, he becomes a different guy when he has to play from behind.
He's done it 2 weeks in a row now.
Yeah, but when he gets pressure put on him, sometimes he throws these balls like Detroit had a pick six that they completely blew, and the guy just dropped it in the first half, and I was like, what the heck? And so he's guaranteed to make some stupid throw that is going to cost them, and the Chiefs capitalize on that all day. They know how to win.
The cool thing is Minnesota already beat San Francisco, and they were a really bad 3 calls away from beating the Chiefs as well. So by my math, Minnesota's a Super Bowl champion this year.
Drop the mic. I can't say the same for the Dolphins because we didn't play the 49ers this year, but we got beat by the Chiefs twice this year. Once in the regular season and then again in the playoffs.
Just got to beat them once, man. That's all it takes.
That's it. Just one time, please. God, please, before I die. But you want to close this out?
Yeah, for sure. That's actually the name of the Vikings podcast, is Before I Die, because I'm going on 47 years and nothing so far. And my uncle feels the same. Jeez. But it's great to be back. Definitely great conversation, and we could talk about personal development a lot. But I think it's important, and I think if you're thinking about it, first of all, great job. You already have half the battle down. Now it's just a matter of putting some action down and figuring that out. So hopefully you enjoyed it. As Javier said, like and subscribe, share it with somebody that you think this may be impactful. But most importantly, however you want to do this, if you want to leave comments, if you want to send us text messages, if you want to respond back to our posts on social, let us know what you would like to have addressed on future topics. And in the same sense, if there's a guest that you'd love to have on here, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone. I'll call Brittany Mahomes if you really want me to. I doubt she's going to make it, but I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call whoever to get them on here, so that way we can talk to them. But just appreciate everybody listening, and we'll see you for number 11.